Welcome to you, Mark Solms, from South Africa. I'm very delighted that you said yes to present at our conference. And our conference the theme has maintaining hope in a world of uncertainty.
I think I can teach you something about hope and something about uncertainty. In the human brain, there are instinctual emotional circuits, just like there are in the brains of other animals. And normally we think of these instincts as mean things, like aggression and sexuality and, fear and stuff like that. But there are instinctual emotions that exist in all of us, which are rather hopeful. One of them, in fact, you could even say, is an instinct to hope. It's called the seeking system, and it's the system which makes us engage positively with things that we don't know. So it makes us curious. It's what makes us interested in what is novel, and it's the feeling that is evoked by activation of that system is literally optimism. It's a sort of a curious, interested, optimistic expectation. Let me engage with this. Something good might happen. So that's the one which I think is most directly, and also, by the way, that is the system which shuts down in depression when we become hopeless and pessimistic and lose our energy. But there are at least two other instinctual emotional systems in the brain, which I think give us cause for hope. One of them is a nurturant drive. We call it the care instinct. And it is, just as the name suggests, it is caring. It drives us to care for, initially, or most narrowly, our own offspring. You can understand biologically why there would be a drive to nurture and care for your own offspring, but it doesn't apply only to our own offspring. It applies to vulnerable and dependent others. So if you see somebody in distress, you want to help. If you see a baby crying, even if it's not your own baby, it makes you feel bad and you want to put things right. If somebody's poor and comes begging at your door, it evokes a feeling of concern. Of course, it conflicts with other feelings. So it doesn't mean we always act on that emotion. Sometimes it conflicts with other emotions, and so and that even happens with our own children. Anybody who's had children knows we don't only love them. They also sometimes annoy us, and they sometimes want our attention when we want to do something else, and so on. But nevertheless, it is a very positive, caring drive built into the mammal and therefore the human brain. Mm-hmm. And so we can harness it. And the third one is an instinctual drive to play. And what could be nicer than that? It's an astonishing fact that all mammals need to play. And that's a very pro-social instinct. In order to play, you have to cooperate. It's something that you do together, and you have to take account of your playmates' feelings. Is it fun for her or him too? If it's only fun for you and not fun for them, they won't play with you. Yeah. So this is a very valuable instinctual disposition, also rooted deep within our human nature. Yeah. So these three, I think, are cause for us to be hopeful. Even though there are other tendencies too. As I say, we do also have other tendencies. So we mustn't be, sentimental about it. but we can at least be hopeful about this positive side of our nature. I think that a knowledge of the basic emotional needs of the human being is an extremely valuable asset to an emotionally focused therapists, because that is the focus. The focus is on the emotions of our patients or clients, and having a knowledge of what the basic kinds of emotional need are helps you to take your bearings, to sort of orientate yourself as to what is going on with the patient. And I put it simply like this. Firstly, our patients suffer mainly from feelings. When my son was little, I heard one of his friends ask him, "What does your father do?" And my son said, "My father is a doctor for feelings," which is that's exactly
Beautiful.
what we are. You know, we deal with emotional problems.
Yes.
And that's the heart of what troubles our patients. And so being able to identify not only which one of the emotions the patient is suffering from, but more importantly, this leads to the question, why? In other words, how is this person going about meeting that emotional need? Because clearly it's not working. I think the main aim of our treatments are to help our patients find better ways to meet their emotional needs.
Yes.
So to know what those emotional needs are takes us immediately to the heart of our task, which is, as I say, to help them to find ways that adequately satisfy the needs of a human being.
Yeah. And I think the playfulness part is sometimes a bit too small in our daily practice. When I work with couples, the playfulness goes away, and the other emotions are very strong, especially the negative emotions, and the needy parts of the emotions are very strong. So
let me just clarify something about play. First of all, I must make clear that although we call it the play system, it's not only narrowly focused on literally playing. It's more a matter of how do I, because we mammals are social creatures, mammals live in groups, we have to learn how to get along, how to find our way into a group that will have us, and to try to be as a member of that group that is respected, that they want to be friends with you.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a matter of learning how to meet your emotional needs in relation to the emotional needs of the other members of the group. Mm-hmm. So it's about, as I was sort of alluding to earlier, it's about cooperation, negotiation, collaboration, reciprocity, turn-taking, mutuality, all of these sorts of things. And what that means, what that means is that people who cannot play, who have not learned how to satisfy that need, they lack those qualities. They lack the capacity to get along with other people, to cooperate, and they lack empathy. They don't take account of how is it for the other. Is this working for both of us? And how do you negotiate all of that? They become very concrete also. And when I say that, I want to use that as a bridge to the other important thing about play, which is, in the literal sense, playing is how children learn how to meet all of their emotional needs in relation to the needs of others, because play is a safe space in which things are not real. So you pretend to be fighting, or you pretend to be scared, or even with respect to the care drive that I mentioned earlier, you pretend that your doll is your baby, and you pretend in the game of playing doctors, where you examine your patient, or your patient. It's actually a sort of playful sexuality. It's children's sexual interest in each other's bodies and so on.
Yeah.
But it's terribly important that it remains play. In other words, that it remains not real. If it becomes real, then it's actual sex or it's actual fighting, and so on. So play is important not only because it facilitates the development of all those attributes I just mentioned about cooperativeness and so on, but also because it enables us to learn in a symbolic way how to meet our emotional needs in relation to the needs of others. And it's all about establishing boundaries and learning how far you can go and how far is too far for the other, and so on. In our troubled society, not only married couples, but the whole world, we need to learn how to play better. We need to learn how to play instead of to have real fights. And I'm not being too literal when I say, for example, that's why we have sport. That's why we have Olympic Games rather than the world at war. I just want to go back. I just thought about what you said a moment ago about social media. You said people take it literally rather than as a means of expressing ourselves. The important thing is, I think, it's not just a means of expressing ourselves. It's an exchange of ideas. It's a matter of talking and listening. And this is what doesn't happen anymore. It's an echo chamber. You only will talk to those people who agree with you, or only listen to those people who agree with you. And if people disagree with you, you cancel them. And that's not play.
No.
That is the opposite. Now, to come to your question about hope for us as psychotherapists, or what gives cause for hope. I start with what I said at the beginning, namely that within human nature, there are positive pro-social emotions like the ones that I mentioned. And so we can harness this aspect of our patients. I think that the great task of mental development is learning how to meet your emotional needs, which is hard enough, but it's made harder by virtue of the fact that they conflict with each other. I mentioned earlier the conflict between, for example, nurture and care and a more selfish, rageful sort of feelings. So the task of life is learning to find ways of meeting our needs that integrates them, into one viable way of being in the world, rather than splitting off. So our patients who are troubled by emotions, those are the emotions they haven't learned how to meet those emotional needs. And so I emphasize the word learnt because any learning system is capable of change. And so, in fact, it's at this point that I want to mention the question of uncertainty. The more uncertain you are about your predictions, we call them predictions. Memories are about the past, but they're for the future. So learning is for the future, learning from the past about what to do, what works and what doesn't work. So that's why we call them predictive systems. And to the extent that you are uncertain about your predictions, to that extent, they remain plastic. In other words, they remain subject to review. And consciousness has everything to do with uncertainty. Things which are unconscious, which operate automatically, have a high degree of certainty. So the main, if I can put it very simply, I think the main mechanism that we are dealing with in terms of how can we hope to change our patients is to make them, to help them to become more uncertain about things that they are perhaps prematurely certain about. So it's to make people more flexible.
Yes.
To have greater tolerance of doubt and uncertainty and not knowing. There was a famous psychoanalyst. His name was Wilfred Bion, and he said that what he aspired to is to have all his answers questioned. And I think that that's a very good way of putting it.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah.
So I'm not saying that uncertainty is a good thing. I'm just saying that premature certainty is a bad thing. So it's those things about which we have good reason to be confident. That's good, but there are many things that we become certain about that we should not be so certain about, exactly as we were talking about in relation to social media. But the same applies to each and every one of us, that we have to tolerate uncertainty in order to be flexible and adaptive to changing circumstances.
You know, this is so hopeful, the way you talk about it, because tolerance of uncertainty gives a very different perspective on certainty than, wow, we're all afraid and we're all scared, you know. So this is very hopeful, Mark. Thank you.
For others to come, well, what I can say is that I have been there many times. And I've been there many times for good reasons. You know, it's because it's a nice place to be. It's really a wonderful country. I find the Dutch unusually tolerant. Speaking about tolerating uncertainty, I find that there's a real open-mindedness in the Netherlands. For example, I was really surprised when I first became aware of the fact that there's no nationalist sort of clinging to language. People in Holland are quite happy to speak English. If you're English, they speak English to you. You know, I even found English books in the bookstores and so on. I thought, wow, you know, that's a real, you know, nationalism is a problem in our times. You know, of course, I know that you have some nationalist, populist politicians too, but my sense of the Dutch attitude is really one of open-mindedness and tolerance. And, you know, that's not just in relation to language, it's in relation to cultural mores. It's an outward-looking society. It's not so inward-looking, or not only inward-looking. I could compare it to some other countries, but I won't name them, which are not like that. And then, you know, of course, it's got a fantastic history and a fantastic cultural traditions, contributions to the arts and to philosophy and to the sciences. It's a wonderful country. I know this might not sound like a good thing to everyone, but for me, I live in South Africa, which is a vast country. So, you know, the fact that everything is so close, you know, you can go from Rotterdam to Amsterdam to Delft to Utrecht. You know, it's like it's
in one day.
It's like yes. For me, it's like going to different parts of Cape Town rather than around the whole country.
Well, I want to thank you for your enthusiasm and your very different way of looking at uncertainty. And I'm looking forward to having you at the conference, and hope to talk to you soon.